Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. You are now listening to That Infernal Noise podcast, part of the Mental Health News Radio Network. Fuck yeah.
What up, y'all? It's another day, another podcast. Today, I wanted to talk about those of us that are from the other side of the tracks, as it were. I listened to a podcast. It's a metal podcast run by, I can't remember if it's his first name. Regardless, it's the Garza podcast. He's part of Suicidal Silence. Metal as fuck. It's amazing. And he had one of my favorite bands, probably my favorite band in the past 10 years in general, King 810. He had them on there, and it's one of the better podcasts I've heard as far as metal goes, because Garza actually understands it and he knows the people, so there's a little bit more of a rapport as opposed to whenever fans try to interview artists and whatnot. Not that it doesn't work sometimes, but regardless, it's a good vibe. And I hadn't heard David Gunn and Eugene Gill open up like that. I don't think ever. Like, I've heard them do other stuff. You know, I don't think they've ever done it together, but, well, I'm not sure if they have. Regardless, the conversation was really good. And they come from a dark place. They're both from Flint, Michigan. And they grew up in the shit. For real. And listening to their stories through their music, reading it in Gunn's book, hearing them talk about it on the podcast, it's oddly familiar. And I'm not saying that I was as involved in that world as they were, by any stretch of the imagination. But I was involved enough to where the stories that they're telling sound strangely reminiscent of the things that my friends and I were doing whenever we were younger. And it's a little jarring sometimes. And I don't mean that necessarily in a bad way. It gives me perspective. Because people like them, like Jellyroll, that we came from nothing. We were nothing. We were told that we were going to be nothing because of where we came from and the things we did, the past that we have, etc. And I don't agree with that. I've never agreed with that, but I've always felt like a misanthrope saying it. And like I felt that way because it was just me. And now I realize that it's not just me. Jellyroll has had all the success in the world. Now, got to do the Opry, which you grew up listening to any kind of country. That's the goal. And he was a dealer. He's been in jail. He's done things that he is not proud of, and he's spoken about at length. I got to go to his concert last year, and it was... I hate using the term religious experience because I know how that outwardly sounds to a lot of people, but it's true. It was a religious experience. I shed tears. I'm not even going to fucking front. During some of those songs and with some of the things he was saying, it really got to me. You know, and I was there with my wife and some of our friends, and how we ended up there was just happenstance. And it was just... that whole day was an emotional day for me, in general. Because it was after my grandma had passed, but before my mom would pass. And things just hit me. Like, it just hit me because he was talking about not being alone and not just because of your past, that doesn't dictate your future. Like, there are always people to tell us that we ain't gonna be shit. And that we don't know shit. And we haven't lived life. And we don't know this, that, and the other. But Jellyroll, one of my favorite quotes that he says, and I don't even think it's his quote, I think he took it from somewhere, is there is a reason the windshield is bigger than the rear view. And whenever I heard that, it resonated with me on a fucking crazy ass level. Because I've always felt hindered by my past. I've made a lot of questionable decisions, done a lot of not so good things to a lot of people. And sometimes it's difficult to reconcile all of that. It's difficult to think of all the people that I've hurt in the course of my life. And I've tried to make amends with as many of them as I can. I apologize because they deserve it, not because I deserve it. Not because I deserve forgiveness. And honestly, this is going to sound fucked up, but I don't care about forgiveness at this point. I care about trying to be the best person that I can be right now. I'm not looking for absolution. I'm not looking for a savior. Someone to indemnify me from all my wrongdoings. Or to justify them, or however you want to look at it. I'm not looking for that. I never have. Well, I'd like to think I never have, but I'm probably delusional in saying that. I wanted to be so much growing up. I wanted to... My big dream, initially, outside of like being a rock star, or being a rapper, or whatever, it was to help people. I had a tumultuous childhood, like so many of us in our generation, and I wanted to help. I wanted to help kids specifically, because I felt like I had nobody to help me whenever I was a kid, and that caused all kinds of bullshit in my head. And once I got a little bit older, I still had that same dream, and I would always look out for the younger ones, you know what I mean? And I was usually one of the older dudes in the crowd, but I mean like the siblings of my friends. You know, like Kevin and Chris and their friends. My friend Tyler. You know, I always had this big brother complex. I still do, to a certain extent. And I just wanted to help. But along the way, I made a lot of fucked up decisions. You know, I stole from people, fucking hit licks, did all kinds of ill shit like that, and worse. And I'm not looking for pity or like, oh, he's got cred or any of that dumb shit. I could care less what anybody thinks about it, to be completely honest. But in listening to that podcast with Gunn and with Gene, it made me realize that we are not where we came from. Like, yeah, you can't deny where you came from. You can't change where you came from. But you can change where you're going. And that's what they did. That's what Jelly did. They didn't let their past dictate their future. And with King specifically, I just feel like there's a lot of kindred spirit there. Because I feel like myself, I'm an amalgamation of all of these things that I've been through. All of the spiritual journey that I've been on, the good, the bad, the indifferent. I'm leaning more back into the bruja aspect of my spirituality. But I'm not losing the Catholic side. I feel like they're all part and parcel and they're all connected somehow. I don't know how, but I know they're all connected somehow. And I'm just doing what feels right to me now. And in listening to their music, I can hear a lot of the ideology that I have regarding religion, spirituality, witchcraft, all of it. And then there's other parts that I hear, like their song Write About Us. Write About Us to me, okay, let me break it down. Memoirs of a Murderer is their first national album, okay. I heard it shortly after it came out because they were going on tour with Korn and Slipknot. Korn and Slipknot are two of my favorite bands, so I went and I checked out the band that was going to be touring with them, which was King. And I immediately fell in love. I had never heard metal like that. Music in general. Because I grew up in like the horrorcore shit, the underground rap, and it was akin to what I was looking for, but it wasn't what I was looking for, because I'm a metalhead. And yeah, it's a descendant, whatever. Okay, fine. Horrorcore is a descendant of the metal era, but all of us grew up on hip-hop, so it's like a fusion of the two. I get that. But for me personally, that's not exactly what I was looking for. What I was looking for was something heavier, something darker, and something more metal-based. And I've told my wife so many times, at 40 years old, I am glad bands like King and bands like Attila did not exist whenever I was a kid, because if they did, I'd have a fucking criminal record longer than I do. And that everybody can take that how the fuck they want, but I'd have gotten into a lot more fucking trouble. Let's put it that way. But hearing their first album, it showed me what I was looking for. It showed me everything that I wanted to hear in music. Because it's the hood experience from a metalhead's perspective. And that's exactly what I was. That's exactly what I saw. Like the stories that they tell in that album. I can point to stories in my life. I'm like, that was this person. That was me. We did this. We did that. For better or for worse. And I personally, this is just my personal opinion, and I don't know if anybody else has drawn the parallel or whatever, but to me, personally, Memoirs of a Murderer is King 810's Purple Rain. And I don't say that lightly, because Purple Rain is one of my favorite albums of all time, to this day. To this day. And I personally feel like the song Write About Us is When Their Doves Cry. And again, I don't say that lightly, because When Doves Cry is arguably my favorite song of all time. Because of the raw emotion, the vibe. Like you could see everything going on as he's talking about it. And that's how I feel about Write About Us. I see David's face as he's singing. I see all of the people that he's talking about. I don't see their faces, but I see their shape. And as he's going through the song, describing everything, I see the people in my life that I knew that represent all the people he's talking about. Some of them are gone and never coming back. Some of them are gone and will be coming back in 5 to 10. Some of them just took off because they had to. They needed to. And I don't know exactly where I fit in with all that. If I'm the guy that took off because I needed to. If I'm the guy that abandoned my old life. I don't know. Frankly, I don't care. Because I was never hood enough for the hood guys. I've talked about this before on the podcast. I was never Mexican enough. I was never white enough. I was never this, that, and the other. Whatever. Cry me a river, right? But that whole album is just a vibe. And I don't say this like I'm the shit or whatever. I say this as a fan and as a like-minded soul. That album is the album that I would have made. And I'm not saying that I could have, I have the ability to make it. I'm saying it as if somebody could take all of the things that I have thought and all the experiences that I've had, not to the extent of them, obviously, but in general, that's the type of album I would have made. One that tells the real story, not the glorified fucking shit that the media tries to do where it's, oh, the gang violence, or it's not that. They're telling the dark side of it. And yeah, you could say some of it glorifies whatever the fuck, but you're talking about what you know, and you're talking about from the different perspectives that you've had over the course of your years. But Right About Us it's in the pantheon of my favorite songs, period. And then there's another song on there that I fucking tear up for almost every single time I hear it. And everybody that I've showed it to vibes with that song, whether they're metalheads, whether they're hip-hop fans, country fans, whoever. Everybody vibes with it. It's called Devil Don't Cry. Which is ironic. Yes, I know. But I tear up every time I fucking hear it. Doesn't matter what I'm doing. Doesn't matter the mood I'm in. It will make me tear up every fucking time. Once or twice, I'm not going to front, it's made me actually cry, depending on the mood I was in. But overall, it just gets to me. Because I've been that guy. Everything that he says in that song just sticks with me. Because I remember having all of those thoughts. I remember feeling that exact same way. I remember thinking that it's never going to get better. I remember thinking that I got no plan. Like, this is my lot in life. I'm going to live this life until it runs out, one way or the other. I have no plans. I have no future. Nothing. For me, personally, that album was the soundtrack to my youth. And again, I don't say that lightly. And I'm sure that the dudes that I still talk to, if they really sat down and listened to it, they'd agree. Because we could all see certain people if you pay attention to those songs. And the reason that podcast impacted me so greatly, and Jellyroll impacts me so greatly, is because I always felt like I was out of place. I'm out of place in the corporate world because I come from the wrong side of the tracks. The shit that I hear people talking, or that I've heard people talking, they were inadvertently talking about me and my friends and the way we grew up. They didn't know that. Nor would they probably care. We're like, well, you don't seem like that. And like, okay, yeah, but that's because you're judging a book by its cover. Well, you're so well spoken. Well, what am I supposed to sound like? Well, you don't dress that way. Well, what the fuck am I supposed to dress like? And hearing David and Gene talk, on that podcast, it made me feel like I wasn't the only one. Like, I'm fucking 40, okay? Like, I know I shouldn't be, or according to people, I shouldn't be getting something out of all this shit. Like, oh, you're still identifying with the fucking blah, 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 whatever. I don't give a shit. It impacted me. It impacted me in a great way. Because I heard the two of them talking. And it just sounded like the conversations me and my friends have. Well, the ones that are left in my circle. I was told I wasn't hood enough because I was too smart. Like, I sounded uppity the way I would talk. The things I would talk about. Like, oh, yeah, you're not really about that life and da-da-da-da-da. And I didn't want to be about the life. It was just what it was. Like, you have to do certain things to survive at times. Like, I was actually told that. That boggles my mind. Like, how can you be too smart for fucking anything? But whatever. And hearing them discuss the things that they were discussing and the eloquent way that they were speaking, you could tell that they're self-educated, they're smart, but they've been through some shit. And I remember having the thought, listening to it yesterday, just, I'm not the only one. Like, I know I present myself as like a nerd and shit, and I am to a certain extent. I fucking love Star Wars, I love anime, all that. But all of it's a part of me. I still have my fucking rags from whenever I was a kid. Like, the gang culture is instilled in me, whether or not I want it to be. And I'm not ashamed of it. I was ashamed of it for a very long time, but I'm not ashamed of it anymore. I wasn't as deep as some people. Some people that I know. Some people that I'm still friends with. But I was there. I saw it. Lived it. And it's nothing to be glorified. It's nothing to be revered or anything of that nature. It was fucked up decisions. It was stupid decisions that we all made. And we've paid the price for it over the years. Some of us more than others, obviously. But just knowing that there's others out there. Like Jelly. Like David. Like Gene. Like, we can be caring people. We can be smart and loving and intelligent and well-spoken. Uppity, if you want to call it that. None of that's negated just because of where we grew up or how we grew up. Because I put my childhood up against anybody's. Anybody's. And I know what I had now. I didn't appreciate it then, but I know now. Like on my desk right now is a picture of whenever I graduated with me, my grandma, and my grandpa. They're my parents. They fought every day to give me the life that they thought I deserved. Every single day they fought for it. We didn't grow up in the biggest house. I didn't have everything thrown at my feet. I had to work for my shit, and I had to do a couple other things here and there to get certain things that I wanted. Or that I thought I wanted. Put it that way. And every time Grandpa would try to talk to me and be like, yo, these people you're hanging out with, things that you're doing, it's going to catch up to you. It's going to catch up to you. And of course, as a kid, I didn't fucking listen because I knew better, obviously. And it all hit home one day whenever, I think it was my senior year, my second senior year. And my grandfather looked at me and he was just like, well, maybe you are dumb. Maybe you're not as smart as I think you are. And I'm not paraphrasing. That whole conversation is burned into my psyche now. And it hurt me. Not at the time. At the time, I was just like, fuck you, I'm smart, I know what I'm doing. Because I was a teenager and I knew better than fucking everybody. But in retrospect, it hurt me. Because I thought they were the only ones that believed in me. And then he didn't. And it wasn't that he didn't believe in me. It was that I didn't give him a reason to believe in me. And he sat me down and he threw me a newspaper. And it was some article about finance. And they were talking about a recession that was on the horizon at the time. Or maybe we were already in it. Because it was right around 9/11. I remember that. It was probably within 6 months to a year after that, now that I think about it. And he was like, read this to me. Just read the two articles, or the two paragraphs of that article. And I read it verbatim. Didn't slow down. Could read every word because I wasn't a fucking moron. So I understood the context of what was being said, and I understood how to pronounce all the words and all of that without hesitation. And he was like, okay, well now, what does all that mean? And it's like, it means that there's shit on the horizon coming towards us, and shit is not going to go well, because once the inflation hits, then everything's going to go to shit. And he just looked at me. And he was like, how do you know that? I was like, because I read it. You told me to read it, I read it. What did you expect? He's like, well then why don't you try? Why don't you try to put some kind of effort into school? Same gripe any parent would have. I didn't have an answer. I still don't have an answer, outside of the fact that I just fucking hated school. It was not my thing. And I see a lot of that in my son now, which he's not making the stupid decisions that I was. Thank fucking God. They give me hope. They give me hope that I'm on the right path now. That I can make something of myself, even though I was dealt the hand in life that I was dealt, or whatever. And that sounds fucking poor, pitiful me, but that's not how I intend it. I just don't know how else to phrase it right now. I don't feel sorry for myself. I did for a very long time. I felt bad. I thought there was only a certain ceiling I could reach. I thought there was only so far I could go. And now I realize that's not the case. People where I'm from are told that this is it. And I've already proved that wrong. I've already made something of myself in the corporate world. People like me shouldn't make it. People like me have been told they weren't going to make it in that world. I've been told by my hood friends, like, I don't understand how you could do that. Or my more hood friends. They're not hood guys anymore, but I did it because I had to. I did it because I had a family. I had kids I had to take care of. Any real motherfucker will tell you it's not about staying true and staying in the hood and doing this and doing that. It's not about that. Any real motherfucker would tell you that's not the life. That's not the way to live. Because it's got a very short shelf life. In some form or fashion. You either end up dead, incarcerated, or addicted. Those are the options. Unless you have the wherewithal to get the fuck out of it. And then you're called fake. Like, oh, you forgot where you came from. And da da da. I've never once fucking forgot where I came from. Not once. I know the things that I'm capable of. I know the things that I've done. I know the people that I've hurt. I remember all their faces. I remember all their names. I remember when it fucking happened. I'm not proud of it. But it happened. And that doesn't change the person that I am today. In fact, I would argue that because of all that, because I have that perspective of that dark side, it helped me become the person that I am today. I'm not where I want to be. I'll admit that. There's a lot more that I want to accomplish. There's a lot more help I want to give. There's so much. There's so much that I want to do. There's so much that I'm going to do. It's just a matter of getting there. And I get discouraged very easily because of what I'm told my lot in life was. So I thank people like David Gunn, Eugene Gill, fucking Jellyroll, people like Lil White. Stay sober, man. You're doing good, by the way. People like Yellow Wolf. People that came from the gutter. You know, like we didn't have shit and we had to get shit. So we made shit happen. And I see them. People that grew up the same way I did. Maybe a little bit worse. Or maybe a lot worse. And they made it. They made it their way. Not the way that they were told they had to do it. They made it their own fucking way. All those people I just named are examples. For me, at least. And some would say that they are poor examples, and I tend to disagree because I have to see the people that have been through it and came out on the other side. I don't give a shit if you had every advantage and all of that shit and you pissed it away until you realized that you had more potential and you finally lived up to it. I don't want to hear that shit. I want to hear the motherfuckers that were told they weren't going to be shit. That at every turn, somebody else was throwing a roadblock in their way. Yet somehow they still persevered and succeeded. And that's where I am in life. I want to be that example. I want people to look at me 10 years from now and be like, yo, somehow he fucking did it. He made it. He's one of us and he fucking made it. And I know I've had a lot of success in my life in general. As far as raising a family, building a career, all the shit you're told you're supposed to do. I did. Didn't always go great, but I did it. I did the straight and narrow. And I'm still going to stay on the straight and narrow. I'm just doing it differently now. Because I don't want corporate America again. Everybody acts like us hood folks are so fucking cutthroat and there's no loyalty and da 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 da. I can tell you right now, the motherfuckers that I grew up around, if you weren't loyal, if you weren't real, you didn't last. In corporate America, those motherfuckers, they're some cutthroat sons of bitches. They don't give a fuck about anybody else's family, anybody else's life, anybody else's upbringing. Because they take advantage of every possible thing that they can. Because why shouldn't they? And that's why I want to get away from it. Like, I got away from it whenever I was younger to raise my family. Now I need to get away from it to take care of myself and my sanity. So to those that are on the other side of the tracks right now, to those that were told they weren't going to be shit, they weren't going to do shit, you're not smart enough, you're not strong enough, you're not this, you're not that, whatever. Fuck all that. Fuck it with a sick dick twice on Sunday. I don't give a fuck. None of that shit matters. What matters is you. What matters is what's in your heart, your drive, your motivation. That's all that fucking matters. Don't let anybody dictate who you are, who you want to be, who you think you can be. Because long ago somebody pissed on their dream and they just accepted it. Whatever it is, whatever you want to do it. Don't hurt nobody. Don't fucking hurt nobody. But live your dream. Because some of us wake up certain days and we hate ourselves because we didn't. And hopefully, it's not too late.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. If you like this episode or know someone who would, please help us grow the show by liking, subscribing, and sharing. Keep up with all episodes on Buzzsprout or anywhere else you get your podcasts.